Welcome to the team, Caitlin Clark, because at this point, she's not just joining the WNBA, and she didn't ask for permission. She didn't wait for a committee. She didn't sit in some sterile office while league executives decided what her name was worth. She didn't play the game. She picked up a pen, and she changed the rules. Because the moment Caitlin Clark locked in a major NBC deal, it sent a message that the WNBA was not ready to hear. The league doesn't control her value, she does. And if you think this is just a media contract, you're missing what's really happening. This isn't about one player getting a bag. This is about the WNBA's power structure cracking in public. Here's why. The league is heading toward the most serious labor fight it's ever faced. The current collective bargaining agreement expires in 2025, and players have been louder than ever about what they want. Real salaries, better revenue sharing, and travel conditions that don't feel like a punishment. The tension has been building for years. And now, right in the middle of that storm, the WNBA's biggest star just secured the kind of deal most players can only dream about, outside the league system. That changes everything. Because for decades, the WNBA's biggest advantage in negotiations was simple. Players didn't have many alternatives. If you wanted to be a professional women's basketball player in America, this was the main platform. Even if you played overseas in the off-season, the WNBA was still the center. But Caitlin Clark just proved something new. A WNBA player can be bigger than the WNBA, and that's what made people inside the league nervous. According to behind-the-scenes chatter and reporting, the commissioner's office wasn't thrilled. Some insiders even suggest the reaction wasn't just disappointment, it was panic. Because if Caitlin can do this, then what happens when the next marketable star does it? What happens when another player gets a huge network deal, a streaming contract, a production partnership, or a media role that pays more than their entire WNBA salary? That's the nightmare scenario for any league trying to keep leverage. And here's the coldest part. Caitlin didn't even do anything wrong. She did what every business owner does, what every franchise does, what every league does. She went where the value was. But the WNBA is now staring at a reality it can't talk its way out of. If the league can't properly compensate its biggest star, someone else will. And someone already did. Because next, we're getting into the real chaos, the CBA pressure cooker, why players are reportedly discussing a strike, and why Caitlin's move may have accelerated the whole conflict overnight. And if you're enjoying this breakdown, subscribe to Ballpool, because this story is only getting crazier. Here's what makes Caitlin Clark's NBC deal feel like a grenade to the WNBA. It didn't happen during a calm season. It didn't happen during a quiet off-season. It didn't happen when the league had momentum, unity, and stability. It happened at the worst possible time. Right now, the WNBA is approaching a labor crossroads that could decide the next decade of the sport. The collective bargaining agreement is set to expire in 2025, and players have been increasingly vocal about what they want next. Bigger salaries, better working conditions, real revenue sharing, and travel standards that match a professional league. Because let's be real, a league can't keep selling growth forever while the players are still living like they're in a startup phase. And that frustration isn't theoretical anymore. Multiple reports and player comments over the past year have hinted that if negotiations don't move fast, a strike is not off the table. Some players have even floated the idea of sitting out an entire season if it comes to that. And that's the part casual fans don't understand. If the WNBA loses a season, even one, it risks losing the exact momentum it spent decades trying to build. Now imagine being the commissioner. You're trying to keep owners calm. You're trying to keep sponsors confident. You're trying to keep broadcasters locked in. You're trying to keep players from walking. And then suddenly, Caitlin Clark signs a major NBC deal to cover the NBA. Not the WNBA, the NBA. Even if you love Caitlin, you have to admit how brutal that optics are. Because Caitlin isn't just a player. She's the league's most powerful negotiation chip. She's the one who sells out arenas. She's the one who spikes ratings. She's the one who brings in casual fans who never cared before. So when she secures a giant opportunity outside the league's control, it doesn't just look like Caitlin got a deal. It looks like the league lost leverage. And here's where things split inside WNBA locker rooms. Some players look at Caitlin's deal and think, Good, finally. A woman is getting paid what she's worth. They see it as proof that women's basketball players can command the same media opportunities men have been cashing in on forever. But others see it differently. They see it as an escape hatch, one that opened for Caitlyn because she has a level of fame 99% of players will never touch. And that's where resentment creeps in. Not because they hate her personally, but because they're thinking, we're in here fighting for better pay and better conditions, and she just found a way around the fight. That's not a comfortable conversation, and the league knows it. Because the moment a star proves the system can be bypassed, the system stops looking permanent. It starts looking optional. And that's dangerous for any league built on controlling player value. That's where we get into the commissioner's reported reaction, why the league allegedly tried to slow this down, and how one sentence, "opportunity comes with obligation," lit the entire internet on fire. Now we get to the part where this story stops being sports business and starts feeling personal. Because once Caitlin Clark's NBC deal started making waves, the WNBA didn't respond the way a confident league responds. They didn't frame it as a win for women's basketball. They didn't say, look at our players crossing over and proving their value. They didn't use it as a recruiting pitch for sponsors and broadcasters. Instead, the league's reaction, at least according to multiple insiders and the way this is played out publicly, looked like panic. And panic is always loud behind closed doors. Here's what you need to understand. The WNBA is already dealing with pressure from every direction. Players want a new CBA that reflects the money now entering the sport. Owners are calculating risk. Sponsors want stability. Networks want growth without chaos. So when Caitlin Clark, the league's biggest spotlight magnet, signs a major deal outside the WNBA's control, it triggers the one fear executives never admit out loud. What if we don't control the future anymore? Because if Caitlin can do it, why can't the next superstar? Why can't the next draft class? Why can't every player with a platform start leveraging media, brand deals, and alternative income streams in ways the league can't touch? That's the domino effect. And that's why this didn't feel like good news inside the league. It felt like the beginning of a power shift. Now here's where things got explosive. During an interview, the commissioner made a comment, one that sounded small, but landed like a bomb. Opportunity comes with obligation. Read that again. Because to the public, it might sound like a harmless leadership statement, but to players, to fans, to anyone who understands the history of women's sports, that sentence sounded like this: you owe us. And the timing made it worse. Because Caitlin Clark didn't become famous because the WNBA gave her a platform. She became famous before she even stepped into the league. She built an audience in college that broke TV records. She sold out arenas before she had a pro jersey. She became a national name before the WNBA ever cashed in. So when leadership implies that the league made her, it doesn't sound like pride. That's where Caitlin finally responds. And the way she handles it is the most ruthless thing she could have done, without ever attacking anyone directly. Here's what separates Caitlin Clark from almost every athlete in modern sports. When the storm hits, she doesn't panic. She doesn't rush. She doesn't post emotional paragraphs on social media. She waits. And after the NBC deal, the WNBA commissioner's obligation comment, the online backlash, the locker room tension, and the endless debate, Caitlin did exactly that. She waited. She let the league talk. She let the media argue. She let the internet explode. She let people assign motives to her that she never even claimed. And then, when the moment was at its hottest, she finally sat down for a one-on-one interview. Prime time, massive audience, the kind of slot where every word becomes a headline. And Caitlin Clark did the one thing nobody expected. She didn't defend herself like she was guilty. She didn't clap back. She didn't attack the commissioner. She didn't throw the WNBA under the bus. She didn't even say the commissioner's name. Not once. And that was the most brutal move she could have made. Because ignoring someone in power sends a message louder than any argument. You don't matter in my story. Instead, Caitlin framed it around something way more relatable and way harder to argue with. She talked about loving basketball. She talked about loving the WNBA. She talked about growing up dreaming of playing in the league. But then she said what every athlete in the WNBA has thought at least once. The dream doesn't pay like a dream should. And that's the part that hit people in the chest. Because Caitlin didn't say it with bitterness. She said it with calm. She basically explained that she wants to build a life. She wants to take care of her future. She wants to make the smartest decision for her career while her value is at its peak. And then came the question everyone wanted answered. Do you feel like you abandoned the league? Caitlin paused, and when she answered, she didn't sound like someone trying to win an argument. She sounded like someone stating a fact. She said, in her own way, I can't save the WNBA. That's not my job. And that is where the entire power dynamic shifted, because it exposed the uncomfortable truth. If a league needs one player to sacrifice her financial future just to survive, then the problem isn't the player, it's the league. And that's why her response hit so hard. It wasn't a rant. It wasn't disrespectful. It was just reality. And reality is dangerous when a system is built on guilt. After that interview aired, you could feel something change. Players stopped whispering. Fans stopped doubting. Sponsors started watching differently. Because Caitlin had just proven something bigger than basketball. A player can love the league and still refuse to be owned by it. That's where the league reaches the breaking point. The players gain real leverage, and the Caitlin Clark effect turns into something that could permanently reshape women's sports.